to our series of interviews with Euros members across the world. We are circling back to our very first interview, which was with our President, Michele Bramstoft, and our Vice President, Susana Bourne. It is great to see you, and thank you so much for taking the time again to do this. We spoke last, I think, in the third week of March. And it's now the 14th of May. The most bizarre thing is that it seems like I only spoke to you yesterday. Well, I did, because we were in contact about other stuff anyway. But I mean, it seems like we only did that interview yesterday. And yet it also seems like months ago at the same time. It's this really strange paradox. So, first of all, how are you both?
Good. Very good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, all's good.
Holding up okay. Because, yeah, like I said, it's been a long time. So, just going to go over, basically what we talked about and what's happened in the meantime. So, Michele, I'll start with you. Tell me what's happening now in Denmark. When we spoke at the beginning, things were in lockdown. Where are you now?
Well, we haven't put it in phases like Spain has, but we are going into like maybe a fourth phase where next week we're going to open up, not hotels, but restaurants and cafes, all right, with distancing. So they're going to have, they'll put some rules in place. The schools for very young kids opened up a couple of weeks ago. Then there was hairdressers and those type of openings, small businesses, small retail. Then just recently this week, store centers like shopping malls and stuff like that, which they said no to museums, which were kind of like, what's that all about? But anyway.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. We're going to be able to go out, and we've always been able, as opposed to Spain, we've always been able to go out as long as we maintain social distancing. I think I mentioned one time too that when you go to the park, where I go running in the park, they have a one-way sign. So you're only supposed to go one way around the park. And things like that. And now on the news, they're talking about, because on Monday, and actually Copenhagen Relocations is going to start, the people who are here, which we're not 100%, because we've applied for the subsidies. So those people are unable to work at this time. But on Monday, we're going to be here, and other business will start coming. But people's main concern is riding the bus or the train. But that was on the news today, and they're very paying attention to that. And so there's going to be, normally you just kind of go down into the subway, but it's going to be single file and two directions, and making sure that you're not facing anybody, you're sitting behind. And so if we continue on the path that we're going, where people are respecting the social distancing, I think we'll be okay.
It's just so fascinating because, all of this comes back to culture and identity and rules and risk management. And, we're doing this research with Sabine Bearlocker about this and looking at how countries are mitigating risk and how they're looking at this. Susana, it's so interesting that, here we have, just tell me what's going on in Spain.
Well, I'm very jealous about that phase 4 business because we're still in phase 0. And that is hard. This is our 60th day in quarantine, which is strict quarantine. And I think people's nerves are now beginning to frail a little bit. Our numbers have of deaths and of hospital beds. There's a lot more ease to hospital beds. And in Madrid, we had 19 deaths yesterday, which is really good for us. And we've had about 217 deaths nationwide. So that for us is very good. It has gone up a tiny bit since we were allowed out for a quick walk, because here they gave us the hand and we took the arm. No, we started doing parties in the street, and Madrid Madrid itself has got a high concentration of people, but it's not a huge area. So I sent you, Dom, a photo of what my walks were, and it's just like Oxford Street on a Christmas
On
day.
Christmas Eve, I know, it really was. Yeah, it was busy.
So although a lot of us are very conscious of social distancing and we're very good at it, there are a few some that are more wanting to party, and that's part of our nature. So that's the only thing that's a bit disappointing. But other than that, our experts are now saying that we're ready for phase 1. Well, we were ready last week, and we should have gone into phase 1 last week. But for the reasons that we're not going to go into now, we didn't. It wasn't allowed. So Madrid has asked again to go into phase 1 as from Monday, and we're waiting. Within 24 hours, we should know whether we're allowed to do that or not. Barcelona, however, has allowed a lot of the surrounding areas, but Barcelona city is also in phase 0, and they haven't asked to go into phase 1. So they'll start going in the following Monday. So that's quite something when we're very similar in lots of respects and sizes and people, etc. And yet one of us is dying to go into phase 1, and the other one is still sort of holding back because of the scare of getting contagious again. So the government is trying to call our state of alarm again now till the end of June, hopefully. But if he doesn't get it until the 15th. But he doesn't know if he's going to get help from the opposition to do that. Furloughs have been extended till the end of June, so that's something which is quite reasonable.
Yeah, that happened also in Denmark, just to interject.
Yeah, that's fine.
Extended, ours too. Yeah.
And I think that's very good. So hopefully, the government, I think, is sort of looking at 1st of July to get back to normal. Let's see. But one of the things that have happened today, which is excellent news, but for my liking, I think a little bit too late, we have now started doing tests on emergency personnel, so the policemen, the medics, etc. And I think that's a little bit late for massive testing. I think Michele, you, for example, have had access to testing for a long time, and I think that's quite key when we're talking about a pandemic like this one.
Yeah, and they had just been doing people with symptoms, but they've opened that up to everybody. So you just need, it's not as easy as driving up to one of the pop-up testing centers. You do have to have a, what do you call it, when you get your doctor has to authorize.
Refer you, yeah.
Oh, okay. Referral, yeah. And right. So that's online, it's all online, and then you can just hand them your card, your health card, and then get the testing in a drive.
No, for us, you can do it on a personal level, you pay for it,
okay.
but then they're taking a long time to get results and things, so yeah.
And just to clarify, these are the you either have it or you don't tests, as opposed to the serology tests, which find the antibodies that you may have had it in the past. This is the you have it now test.
I think
yeah, you have it now test. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to pick up on there. Firstly, I'll come on to my second question in a minute. I mean, Susana, what's so interesting about what you just said is the kind of the regional differences between how this is being approached. So you have one set of rules in Catalonia, you have one set of rules in Andalusia, you have, I mean, that is something that, you know, in the UK, which also has 3 autonomous regions, England, Scotland, Wales, well, and Northern Ireland, sorry, 4.
Yeah.
They have stuck behind a single approach because, you know, like you, I'm certain that there are towns and villages around the place which have never had a case. But they felt that the need for political unity, I guess, was more important than saying, okay, the Outer Hebrides, you don't have to be in lockdown anymore, because people in London will be going, well, that sucks for us because we still do. So, I mean, how are people taking that? Like you say, in Barcelona, they're okay about still being on lockdown.
Well, they're okay. It depends who you talk to, and I think this is. I think as human beings, it never rains to everybody's liking, and I think that's one of the big things here. I think the general, I think it's very difficult to say what generally people are thinking. I think it's very, very much divided. I think one of the main divides is, are we more concerned about the economy and getting back to work and starting to get our lives back to what it was, or are we more concerned of the pandemic restarting again and taking us all back to state zero?
Yeah.
So I think it depends who you talk to, and I think it's very, very much divided as to what people's moods are in. I mean, general moods are people are beginning to get impatient. You can see, you walk down the street and somebody turns around suddenly, and then suddenly somebody shouts at them. So you can feel that there's stress beginning to happen. People are impatient. They want to know, am I going on holiday? Even if it's to Torrevieja or to, I don't know, the Barcelona coast or wherever, it doesn't matter. But people want to know what they're doing. They want to know what they're doing with their children. They want to know if they're going to go to work. They want, people want to know. There's frustration. There's frustration because some cities pass, other cities don't pass their phases, and people, again, because of the division of what people, it depends on people's what they've lived, really, what their experiences are, because everybody's lived their experience and have a certain thing in mind more than others.
Yeah.
So, and then people are very concerned about, there's a lot of people that have been made unemployed, or that the furloughs haven't, because of the amount of furloughs, the government, it hasn't got the capacity to generate the payments for all these people in time. So there's people that haven't been paid since March. They still have to make frontage to their, to their rents, to their filling their fridges. People are worried that the food banks are very limited, but there's no one in the supermarkets asking for a kilo of rice and a kilo of spaghetti. But there's a lot of people that are now starting to be hungry. And so yeah, it's very, I guess it depends who you're talking to. And then you get the ones, and there's a lot of them too, that are very optimistic. We're in this together, we're going to get out of this together, although those of us that can get out of this, because some of them unfortunately haven't made it and will not get out. But there's still that optimism and, laughter and let's go. And so, we have to wait another week and we'll go to the bars, and so there's a bit of, I find it very difficult. People have asked me that question before, and I don't know what the answer is. I think we're all so different, and it depends on your experience and what you've lived as to what you want, what is more important to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. And it's certainly, that's the same from, some people are very upbeat about this, but that again comes down to the basics of human psychology and culture. You mentioned another thing about the whatever it is the government wants to do, they have to get the support of the coalition, because obviously you have a political coalition going on right now in Spain. That adds a whole other dimension as well, because the certainty that, for example, Michele, in Denmark, you have a majority government, right?
I think we have a coalition too.
Oh, you have a coalition, but did your coalition agree?
They all agreed in the beginning, okay? Right. But now there's a debate tonight because some people, the left wants to extend the subsidies, and they're gonna see what happened. They're gonna debate about it tonight.
I mean, it's really interesting because, again, one of the things, not that it was something that I personally wanted, because I'm anti-Brexit, but the government that we have is very pro-Brexit, and it has a massive majority. So there is absolute certainty in the political message that's coming out, which, for Spain, for example, you've got to wait for them to fight it out almost. Which is interesting. It's just another dimension, isn't it? I mean, so Susana, you alluded to, the national mood starting to be, a bit frustrated, but talking about, how people are doing. Michele, how's the kind of feeling in Denmark? I'm assuming it's pretty different.
It is, although there are still, depending on who you speak to, there are still people who are quite terrified of catching it. Yeah. And those are mainly people who are either have a precondition themselves or live with somebody who does. On the other hand, The young also are a little bit lax about the social distancing, but we are keeping the numbers down, and we're under 200 people in the hospitals.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. So, and now they're starting something, changing their strategy slightly, that if you test positive, then you're going to be quarantined, and there's certain hotels that have offered to take people. So, and if you're unable to quarantine yourself, especially.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say that for the most people, especially when they look at the rest of the world, we're looking a lot at, of course, Spain and Italy, but also United States. We feel very fortunate, and I think people realize that here. I do think that it's quite a positive attitude, and they're doing. We get complimented by the Prime Minister saying, "You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. We have to keep this up." And especially as we come back to the office, we need to have things that the hygiene and the distancing has to remain until we get some kind of a cure or something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's there's so many. It's so interesting how I'm so privileged to be able to have these conversations with you and with our other members around the world. And I was talking with Priscilla Montana earlier in the week, and she was saying, you know, one of the things that kind of separated how people are feeling in the States is, you know, your ability to leave a certain situation. You know, she's saying, I live in a high rise in Dallas, but we have a house by the lake. So we left for the lake because that's where we felt more secure. And I know, Michele, you had a similar experience, but Susana, you're saying, no, in Spain, absolutely not. You're not allowed to go to your house on the beach.
No, you're allowed to stay where you are, and if you're within 4 walls, so much the better. But even in phase 1, when we open to phase 1, we still cannot go out of our
immediate
city
environment. Yeah. And that's pretty much the same in the UK. I mean, there was a lot of, I don't know whether it's happened with you guys, but Airbnb were smacked over the wrist here because they were continuing to rent rural properties when people had been told, please don't move to rural areas because there isn't the infrastructure. How are your teams? We're quite a long way in now. How are they coping?
Susana, go ahead.
Yeah. Me?
Yeah.
We're very well. I have to say, I'm surprised. I'm surprised how well the team is and how everybody is really keeping together. They're there. They're interested. They want to help. They want to, you know, what can we do? We've been talking about how we can make things better. We've set up a COVID group so that, you know, that they're constantly reading press and keeping us informed of what's going on. And so, I mean, we've made the whole group, the whole company is assisting with this, but there's 6 people that are putting this kind of information. They're getting out, each one from their own, you know, the lawyers are sort of concentrating more on the immigration side, you know, that now we're going to all have to go into quarantine, like I think most people, and all those kind of things. But yeah, and that's very motivational to see how they, you know, I'll do this, and how about if you and I do this, and they're off they go and they do their things, and it's really nice to see them work together, and they're motivated. I know that I've also been hearing on some of these talks how difficult it is to motivate your staff when they're on their own often or whatever. And yeah, we do get sort of group meetings and have fun and these kind of things, but in general, I think everybody's doing surprisingly well, really. Each one carries their mast with their sail, but I think we're doing surprisingly well. So I think it's very positive. And I think also the fact that we haven't furloughed anybody and we haven't put anybody on the unemployment. We wanted everybody to stay put. We wanted to give everybody a feeling of, you know, we're all in this together. We do have reduced hours and therefore a slightly reduced salary, and that's across the board. That's everybody, and I think that also helps them to think, you know, the company itself is also trying to support us here, because a lot of other people, colleagues of theirs or you know, friends of theirs, haven't been so lucky and have been furloughed and haven't had the money come through yet, or haven't been furloughed and have been put on the unemployment. So that's also, I think that's also helped, and a lot of them have rang to express their thanks. So it's very nice. At the moment we have a great team, and hopefully long will it last. Yeah.
Yeah, you do have a great team. I mean, you've said that to me all along, and I'm really pleased to hear that, because things have been tough for you guys.
Yeah.
Michele, how's your team doing? And are you back? You were saying about partially coming back to the office now.
Well, a few of us have been coming in on a regular for the last week and a half or so, especially myself. Yeah, and the immigration, they rotate because it's easier to submit applications from the office and do some other stuff. But we plan to, that's part of Monday opening. Companies are allowed under a certain amount to come back to work. And so that's what we're going to do. But we have a daily huddle, and everybody really enjoys that. It's like coming together. At least we can see each other once a day and ask questions. We of course, we're on the phone a lot more with each other, and email and chats, what have you. There, we have taken advantage of some of the government subsidies. So that means that those people that are unable to work right now, they're also invited to the huddle, so they can feel connected, because it is too, and not everybody does it, but most of them do, and when they can. So it's positive. Dream team, they're engaged. Just I feel very fortunate and happy about that. So
I mean, it is, because I know, again, you have an amazing team, and you know, everyone I'm talking to, if you had these conversations in other industries, you wouldn't be hearing this across the board. But you know, we do hear this across the board in mobility. The people are so amazing, and you know, the teams work so well.
Yeah.
You both mentioned,
but it's fascinating, because we were speaking to Alistair, and he was saying, you know, how when he put people on furlough, it was very sad to see that half the team, not half the team, whatever it was, a few people, that weren't there. And he said, you know, you really noticed that, and it's a shame. So it is true that, and I think, yes, very much in this industry, it's very important with the people that you're with. It's they get missed when they're not there, most of them.
Yeah,
absolutely. I was going to say, because you both mentioned immigration there, and I'm going to change one of the questions a little bit because it's more relevant. At this time, obviously, immigration rules are still very strict. So, Susana, in Spain, you still have quarantine, anyone coming into the country, or is anyone coming in at all?
Yes, we're allowed to have people either that people that live here, or that reside here, or Spaniards. They can all come back. So I could go to my, for example, I could move to my, now at this stage, I'm talking phase 0, I could go to my holiday home if I was if that was my permanent residence. So there's a few people that have gone to these houses because they're still registered there for whatever reason, but it's not easy to move. But when we do go into phase 1, I think, yes, people that work here will be allowed in. And so there's a lot of criteria, and again, although they will probably be let in at passport control at the frontiers, some of the airlines are not letting people fly. So we're telling everybody, make sure that your company, your airline company, is letting you fly, because once you get over here, we'll help you. You know, if we said you can come over, we need to make sure that you can. It would be awful to try and get them over here and then they can't come in. But yeah, so we will have to self-quarantine once you come in from abroad.
And Michele, similar?
Similar. We've always been able to, if you had a work permit and you were registered here, you've always been able to come in. And so any relevant job, you're allowed to come in. Now they've relaxed that a little bit more, so immediate family, if my sister wanted to come visit me, she could come visit me.
So different.
Yeah. On the other hand, there are no direct, I mean, it's, there's no direct flights like with SAS to the United States, for example.
Okay.
And we've had some cases with clients that to make sure that they could come in through an airline. I think they were coming from the UK. They got a paper from the embassy saying permission to fly. But this was already a few weeks ago. All right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we can't always guarantee that the airline will let you fly, but you're allowed to come in once you're here. And it's not, you don't have to self-quarantine, but it's highly recommended.
Yeah, I mean, there's two just really quick anecdotes. First of all, I mean, I just assumed that we were on a complete blanket ban and no flights. And I was talking to Martina, I know I've shared this with you.
Yeah.
Martina Sharvai and her daughter, who's been studying in London, went back to Frankfurt at the beginning of the UK lockdown. I said to Martina a couple of weeks back, how's Clarissa? And she said, oh, she's back in London. I said, what? She literally booked a flight with Lufthansa online, went to the airport the next morning, got on the flight, got to London, went back to her flat. I mean, and then Peggy Love's daughter, her au pair, who was from Frankfurt, wanted to go home, managed to get a direct flight from JFK into Frankfurt last week. I mean, so yeah, the differences are extraordinary.
And I was speaking to an air steward, friend, and she was saying that it can take, you know, anything like up to 3 days to get herself from Mexico the other day.
Right.
It took her 3 days to get to Mexico, Barcelona, because she had to stay over. There was no connecting flights or anything. So, so there is a big change we are going to have to mentalize that, at least for the beginning, it's going to be a big change. And the other thing is, we have opened for Spanish people or people that are residing flights from, let's say, Canary Islands to Madrid.
Oh, okay.
But again, all the seats were occupied, and people were up in arms and asked for the police to come up and write about it, because they shouldn't be sitting next to somebody who, you know, they wanted one seat yes, I guess, one seat no, one seat yes, and there was a big thing about that. This was on the news Monday, I think it was, over the weekend. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of changes to the airline
mass in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's that in itself is very interesting, because I know that on Clarissa's flight, for example, none of the middle seats were occupied, and where they could, they left a row in between.
Right. Yeah.
There are not that many people flying, so it was
exactly.
But those flights coming out of the Canaries were obviously full. There was a lot of people wanting to come back.
Yeah,
extraordinary. Listen,
but yet on the buses, buses here, for example, they do have the middle. They do have that separation.
Okay, all right.
But on the plane, it didn't happen. So.
I know. Yeah. It is extraordinary. Look, it's just great to talk to you both. I was going to ask you another question about the financial aid, but you've both actually already talked about that in your various conversations. It's great to see you. Let's do this again in a month and see where we are, because I mean, one of the things that is so interesting is that, you know, when we spoke a month ago, you know, your countries have just gone in completely opposite directions. I mean, Susana, you're basically exactly where you were, and Michele, you're kind of like, you know, sprinted out of the starting gate. Which is extraordinary. Yeah. And like I said, you know, Sabine is going to do this intercultural research, and there is a point to that, apart from the fact it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the point of it is that it gives some idea to people when we all start moving again about where you've come from and how this was perceived and where you're going and how it's perceived. And that mindset's quite important. Like, say, if you've come from Denmark and you're going into Spain, understanding the difference of how you all dealt with this is actually quite important to, you know, be culturally settled. Yeah. Great to see you. Thank you so much. We'll catch up again in a month. And in the meantime, stay well and stay safe. And it's always lovely to see you.
You too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.